This special was certainly a good idea, but in retrospect, didn't exactly paint the NWA product and roster in the best way possible, did it? I'm John Renton with the retro review of NWA Supertowns on the Superstation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. This is basically just taking matches from all over the country and putting them in one special and saying, come see the stars of the NWA. You would have thought they would have picked better matches than the ones they presented here. This was promoted as the return of Magnum TA. He would have a sit-down interview with Tony Schiavone. Big goddamn deal, considering this was just a few months after his tragic accident that ended his career early. You have to wonder, where would his career have gone? Do you think he would have flamed out by the early 90s? Would he have continued through 2000? Would Jim Crockett Promotions, would the NWA have been able to survive more with a star like Magnum TA, or do you think anything could have been done to stem the tide and the steamrollering that Vince McMahon was doing to the wrestling industry, killing the territories, the various territories, and they were all flaming out, and various territories were being bought by Jim Crockett Promotions, Central States, Florida, the UWF a little bit after this, that he would buy from Bill Watts. It was too much too soon, and it's been a whole bunch of stuff's been talked about, in various other videos by people that have way more knowledge than myself. I'm just a silly wrestling fan giving my opinions. But yeah, for a 7-match special with a few cool things, there were a few decent things in this, but overall this is probably one of the most boring 2-hour specials they could have put together, and it's really, really sad. So, hosted by Tony Schiavone and David Crockett, king of the Wild Front, kick him, whip him like a dog. Man, Davy Crockett was certainly interesting, wasn't he? I mean, the Explorer. David Crockett was definitely an enthusiastic announcer. So anyway, Schiavone, he talks about what cities will be represented, and we go to the Philly Civic Center on January 10th, 1987. And it's Arn Anderson versus one half of the U.S. Tag Team Champions, Barry Windham. These two always work well together. This one was fine. There were a few too many rest holds, as you would expect, with a lot of arm focus. But that being said, when it picked up, it did pick up pretty nicely. It did end with a sunset flip, though, so it wasn't exactly, it's like, oh, just out of nowhere, sunset flip. Oh, okay. I mean, that happened a lot in World Class and other territories. But then Arn hit a gourd buster to basically continue this possible, precursor to a feud, even though I think around this time, or maybe it was just after, Windham and Flair would engage in a series of matches that were classics. It was like the forgotten trilogy of really, really good matches that Flair could have with really just about anybody. Maybe not as memorable as the ones he had against Ricky Steamboat, but that was probably because those were in front of a bigger audience as far as pay-per-views and stuff. But man, Barry Windham, one of the most naturally gifted athletes, and he wasn't in rare form here, but him and Arn crafted a decent enough match. And then we go to the Washington, D.C. Armory on January 24th, 1987. Sharp-dressed man plays gorgeous Jimmy Garvin to the ring. He's got Precious in his corner, and he takes on Brad Armstrong. Continuing their feud from a few months prior, this wasn't, okay, it wasn't good. I mean, I was trying to find a nice way to talk about it. Brad Armstrong, very good worker. Jimmy Garvin, when he was like one of the hairband guys, he actually could do some good stuff, but this just had a lot of rest holds, and it just wasn't really all that great. We did get a launch over the top rope, and that lost it for Jimmy Garvin. And yeah, this is a match that while you could hear sharp-dressed man and get a kick out of that, there really wasn't a lot to this match that you needed to go back and revisit or even visit once. So we get a Rock and Roll Express concert. Well, Ricky Morton sure tried to sing. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It wasn't great, but it was fine. It was a little bit of a break from the action and was at least a little bit better in a train wreck fashion compared to the previous match that we saw. And then we go to the St. Louis Arena in, obviously, St. Louis, Missouri. Because if there is a St. Louis, Maine, I don't think anybody gives a shit about it. Why am I dumping on Maine? I have no idea. So, the Batten Twins took on the Mod Squad. Central States tag titles. This is when the Central States territory meant absolutely fuck and all. In this match, not bad. Couldn't tell the teams apart at all. Except that the announcers mentioned their names. And, yeah, we do the thing that, or the finish comes, it's the same. I mean, there was one they done in the territories, but most memorably done on, a huge stage by Rick Rude and Bobby Heenan when Ultimate Warrior's foot was pulled and they did the top 1, 2, 3. They did that here. And the Battens won. Cool. Okay. Not a bad match. Actually, pretty decent action. I mean, yeah, there were a couple of rest holds, but it is what it is. It was the territory days. but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It was just the fact you couldn't tell the difference between the teams. Interview with Paul Jones talking about Rude and Fernandez, R&R, Rude and Ragin, because he was a Ragin' Bull, Manny Fernandez. Rude could always talk. Manny wasn't bad when he was fired up, but not exactly a dynamic personality on the mic. At least from what I've seen of him. I mean, obviously people that remember more about the territory days or maybe are a little bit older than me might appreciate Manny Fernandez more. This is about them being the tag team champions and wanting to be the number one seed in the upcoming Crockett Memorial Cup. So we go to Hollywood, Florida, in the Sportatorium. No, they didn't transplant the Sportatorium from Dallas to Florida via a huge magnet. They didn't do that. They just have their own Sportatorium there. Ivan Koloff and Vladimir Pietrov versus the Rock and Roll Express. I'd heard of Vladimir Pietrov, easy for me to say. Never seen him. Never seen him in a match. And I don't think he lasted very long. So we do get some strength spots, and then later we get a DQ after the Russian chain gets used. And then the Rock and Roll Express use a chain and chase off, and there we go. This wasn't a terrible match, but Pietrov, I can see why he didn't last necessarily that long, because he had an okay look, but that was it. That gimmick also was pretty much done by this point. And after Nikita left the group, because Crusher Khrushchev, a.k.a. Demolition Smash, had, left the company, and it was just Ivan Koloff. But Ivan Koloff by that point was going to be turned babyface soon after, and, he was near the end of his full-time career. So anyway, we get a great plug of the Crockett Cup. And by great, I mean it's basically a tourist video. Hey, look at all this shit we've done. Come visit us. Please come visit us. Please. We put a lot of money that we wanted to put in our pockets towards this to please you people. What do you mean, you people? They might as well have said that. So, we go to the Great Western Forum in Inglewood, California. Man, Crockett loved to run the Forum a lot. I don't know why, since he would always lose money, since you'd have to basically sell the place out and then some to make some goddamn money. But yeah, maybe Am I confusing the Great Western Forum with the LA Forum? Are there two forums in the greater LA area? I'm trying to remember here. I mean, but regardless, running that, there was a decent crowd, but not a big crowd. This was from January 29, 1987. It was Dusty Rhodes versus Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon putting up a $10,000 purse. Why? I have no idea. For the TV championship. There's some star power here. This is also when you can start to hear a few boos for Dusty. Just a few. Just a few. And it wasn't... Dusty and Tully could always work well together. And they did here. It was a shorter match than, what they could have done. Not 15 minutes or so. About 8.5. We get a ref bump, and then Wyndham and Arn run in. And it's a melee and a DQ. And there you go. And then Dusty gets beaten up by a shoe. Boom, boom, boom. They just beat him up with a shoe. That's pretty much it. Schiavone interviews Magnum TA. This is probably the best thing on the show. Talks about his recovery and that he's happy he's not a complete quadriplegic. It's very emotional. Very emotional stuff. You could tell it meant a lot to him that the fans had the outpouring of support for him. It's a shame he didn't get to continue his career. At least he was able to continue living on, because there aren't a lot of people that would live through that. So read up on Magnum TA's accident, and you'll see why I say that. So the Charlotte Coliseum, there's no date. I would imagine this is probably around later January, mid to late January. Ric Flair versus Nikita Koloff. No DQ match for the NWA title. Yet countouts also count. That's important for later, because it's a countout finish, in case you didn't guess. So Ray could get the best out of anybody. There was a pile driver rule in North Carolina. If you used a pile driver, you were DQ'd. He used that, and boom, Nikita just popped right back up. At one point, there's there's some good outside action and everything. Tully gets involved. We get a count-out victory, or a double count-out, rather, even though it seemed like Nikita was on the verge of getting the victory. Dusty comes down, and we get a melee and everything, and that's all we get. Yay! Sadly, the best match on the show. Sadly, the best match. And that's nothing against anybody involved. It's just given the quality of, what you would expect from the NWA. This wasn't all that great. But again, still the best on the show. So we go back to the Forum on the 29th of 1987. So basically the same goddamn show that we were just at for the previous match. And I would imagine that this was probably not well received, considering it was a Skywalker's match between the Road Warriors with Ellering versus the Midnight Express with Cornette and Bubba, which sounds like a good idea, except it was a couple minutes, and Eaton drops, and then basically, like, the idea is Hawk's here where he's hanging down, and Dennis has his feet on the little, partition here where they put up the scaffold, and then he walks out and just drops. That's basically it. There's not much to this. This is not a very good special. To me, it's indicative of the territory system at the time, where basically Crockett, they had some really good ideas, but they were spending too much money. They were going everywhere. Had they not gone to LA so many goddamn times and stayed in their core territory and branched out here and there, they could have kept things alive. But they were just spending way too much money, and it was just insane. That being said, there are way worse times to waste 2 hours of your life, but this isn't necessarily a great special. If you see it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.